The first time I was going to deliver a big test report, I had different stakeholders. I had owners, development leads, different product owners, everything. Every 4 months, I was going to create a test report and show the status for a go or no-go meeting. So I went through all the literature I could find, trying to understand what is the best way to present test information, test data, test results. So I scoured the internet, I read through all the books I could find, and at the end, I found the ultimate way to communicate test results. When Marvel makes my origin story, he will start with that one. A happy smiley, or a neutral one, something that needs to be looked at, or something that obviously needs to be looked at. I wanted to make it as simple as possible for them to understand where do they need to take action, where do they need to look at, what do they need to ask questions about. And just one smiley for everything was a little bit too simplified, so I used quality criteria: functional suitability, compatibility, reliability. And with this report, I made it very easy for them to see where do they need to ask questions. It's blinking out of here, but it's the red one. That's the one they need to ask about first. And then they need to ask about the yellow ones. And the green ones, that's fine. We haven't found anything. So these are the quality criteria that I presented for them. Behind this, to explain why I put a red, sad smiley, I also had another 20 to 30 pages of information. Test automation results, exploratory testing results. We had performance reports, security reports, everything. So I made it simple for them, but then I had all the information to back this up. And this is how I will show you a little bit today, how I gathered this information, or how I gathered this information today. But first, back up a little bit about myself. My name is Martin Nilsson, originally from Västerås, not far from Stockholm. And now I live in Øredev with my 2 kids and my wife. My 2 kids, one of them loves playing chess, the other one loves playing handball. And it's an interesting time to hang with them. I always loved technology. I always loved picking things apart. I always loved to explore new things in technology. And this led me to my studies at Chalmers Institute of Technology. I'm a Master of Science in Electrotechnology with a speciality in complex and adaptive systems. And it turned out that studying chaotic systems actually has its uses when I start working with software, and in the software world can be quite chaotic at times. I also studied some business administration before landing my first real interview for a real job at Ericsson. So this was in the Lund office, just north of here, for Ericsson mobile platforms. I made sure that I had lots of time to come down to Lund because I didn't know the city. I had a map of the city. And I wanted to be relaxed when I came to the interview. So the first thing that happens when I go off the train is that I go in the wrong direction. I look at the map, it doesn't match what I'm actually seeing. So obviously the map is wrong, so I continue a little bit before turning around, admitting defeat. And I didn't know which bus stop there was, so I had to walk quite quickly all the way up to the Ericsson office. So now I arrive 5 minutes before. The pulse is a little bit higher, I'm a little bit sweaty. I announce myself at the reception that I'm here for the interview, and I can finally sit down and relax. Try to gather a little bit of, relax a little bit for the interview. I take up the email that I printed, and I'll just read through it once more to understand, so I haven't missed anything. And I read that this was not for a developer position. This was for a test position. Shit, what does a tester do? I had no idea. I had 5 minutes to make up a story why I really love testing, why I find it fascinating, and why Ericsson really would like to have me, because I really wanted that job for the situation I was in at that time. But they fell for it. I don't know how I managed to pull it off. Maybe they were desperate as well. But I like to refer to this as the best mistake I made in my professional career. Turns out that the testing and quality track really suited me. I got to work with some really interesting technologies through the years, and work with some really interesting problems. But I also got to work with people. The longer I work, the more experience I have, the more truth it is to the saying from Gerald Weinberg that it's always a people problem. That's where the complexity lies. The technology is not always that difficult, but working with people, that's a challenge. Ericsson turned to Ericsson, and I left for my current employer, House of Test. And through the years, I've been working all over the field. I've been performance testing, I've had management and test management and coordination roles, from small teams up to big organizations with 100 testers. I, together with some very talented colleagues, built a software testing education, a 1.5-year-long software testing education at a vocational university. I worked with test automation in different kinds. I built a complete test automation system for door opening machines. And I know that 5 years after I left, the whole company is still running my original setup. And today I'm a test manager on paper at Tetra Pak. Okay. Just a little bit about the structure of this presentation, because I'm going to talk a little bit about theory. And the reason behind this is a revelation I had a couple of years ago. I was at a conference, heard a conference talk. So at this point of time, ChatGPT has been out roughly a year. So it wasn't super new, but we're still exploring. And this guy, he showed how he had taken functionality description, put it into ChatGPT, and he got lots of test cases. And he was very happy about it. But when I sat there thinking, I realized that he never reflected about, do these test cases actually provide any value? Do they test the right thing? Now, they were very nicely written, but the value of it was uncertain. And he never reflected if this was the right way, the best way to actually test the software. Do we need a test case? Or are there better ways to test it? Automated check by a developer, exploratory testing, or some other efforts. So the revelation I had at that point was that if you don't know what questions to ask the AI, and this will be all I will talking about AI, and you cannot question the answers you get back, then you will be a slave to the AI because you need to follow and run all the test cases because you don't know which one are actually important. So you need to run them all. Now, if you know how to formulate a question and you know how to question your answer that you get back, you can pick out what is actually valuable for you, and that will lift you up. So therefore, it's important today, I think, more than ever, to focus on actually learning the basics in theoretical, having good models, and to read books. My kids constantly get to hear it now that you need to read books. Otherwise, you will be a slave to the AI, and I think I'm dramatic. I will show some practical implementation just to demystify a little bit. That is not that difficult today to actually extract test data from modern tools. I will show you some results and the questions around them. And if you haven't picked it up, I will be talking a lot about questions today. Starting off with a theory. This is one of my favorite go-to models that I use, the Heuristic test strategy model by James Bach. And it's a nice easy to understand model, but it's hard to master. Oops, let's see if I can do. See, no, I didn't get it. Okay. So at the top we have project environment. So this is how does the actual setup look like? Do we have waterfall type of development? Do we have Scrum or Scrumfall or something in between? The product factors are, of course, the actual product. What are the functionalities? What do we have? Back end, front end? What are the features? And what we will be focusing on today are the quality criteria. Let's see, it doesn't. Some technical difficulties. Okay, quality criteria. So based on all of these things, we decide how do we test, what are test techniques. And we shouldn't limit ourselves to just testers, of course. It's also who is the most suitable to do the testing. Some of the tests are better for developers to do with the technical know-how. Some of the things might be better for the end users or product owners to do the testing. And in the end, we get the testing quality story. We need to be able to tell a story about what is the quality. What have we tested? What knowledge do we have? What is our best guess to the best of our ability? The big question that I see a lot of organizations struggle with is what are the questions to ask? And what I often see in organizations is that when they don't know what to ask, they often fall back to how many test cases have you run, how many have passed, or how many bugs. So in one case, they were trying to understand how good are the development teams at delivering with good quality. And there was one team that had lots of bugs. And in their view, lots of bugs means bad quality. From my point of view is they are the best team at testing because they're actually finding the bugs, right? So this is a struggle, how to understand, how to ask the right questions so they can get the information they need to take decisions on. And moving on, the first question we need to answer is, what is quality? How do we define quality? And I love to ask these questions in my workshops or when I present. There's lots of interesting, I can get lots of interesting answers. But I will go through this just a little bit quickly. And my favorite definition, there are others, is that quality is value to someone that matters. Originally by Jerry Weinberg and expanded by James Bach and Michael Bolton. So we're looking for value. And we need to understand who actually matters in our case. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily only the end user that is the person that matters. It can also be us. When we need to modify the code or create a bug fix in a couple of years' time, we need the code to have good quality, right? This also implies that quality is subjective and contextual. What is good value for one person might not be for another one. Different people in different contexts might see different kinds of values. And this is where the quality criteria comes in. I often use the one from in the list from the Heuristic test strategy, but at organizations I like to use the ISO 25000 because it sounds a little bit more official and it's a little bit easier to sell in. They have changed the wording in the latest updates, so this is a slightly older version. But if we start with functional suitability, this is the obvious one. The functions that we actually develop, we want to make sure that they work. But in a lot of organizations, they focus only on this part and forget the other ones. So if you use an example as a login screen, you enter your password or your username, your password, and hit enter, and you should be able to log in. That's the functionality. But does it work with different kinds of user authentication? Is it only Active Directory it works with? Or can we log in with Facebook or Google? Or do they have some kind of Unix authentication in the background? Is it actually reliable? Can we log in over and over again every day? Or does it happen that people are locked out for some reason? Can we change and modify it? How is the maintainability? Can we add, create a quick bug fix when we find it? Or does it take a long time because the code is difficult to use? Can we test the new features or the new bug fixes? Performance. So is it actually efficient? If one person logs in and it takes a couple of seconds, maybe not a problem. But it can hint that there can be problems when we have a lot of users that are logging at the same time. Usability, of course. Is it easy for the user to log in? And we might have contradictions between this, between security, for example. A more usable, higher usability might mean that we skip login. Right? Then it's very easy to use. But we need security today. So we decrease usability by having advanced password or long passwords, make it a little bit cumbersome, but it's way more secure. And portability. How installable is it? Is it easy to replace? And installability is something I like to raise up a little bit extra, because when we sell products to organizations, the IT department might prefer something that is easy for them to install and maintain, even if the product is a little bit worse for the actual end users. So we shouldn't forget about this one. Just a bit quickly about definitions of test. After working as a test specialist for a couple of years at Ericsson, I got the question from my current manager, how do you define test? And I had no idea. I hadn't actually given it a thought. I will go through this just a little bit quickly, but I want to highlight my favorite one. Questioning a product in order to evaluate it. So if you meet testers that say that you cannot automate testing, they're most likely using this, referring to this definition, because a computer cannot question. If you haven't had a thought process and question what you're doing, question the product, ask the question, then you haven't tested. You have just followed a checklist. So if you're going to hear me talk about automated checking, this is the same as automated testing. It's just a preference in a different word. But this one, it might not catch the whole testing area as nicely, but it's I really like to use this one. Testing is an information service. Don Hayes gave me this to give as a tip to my software testing students. And I like this, to use the information perspective. We want to extract information, and we use testing as one way of doing it. But it doesn't mean it has to be a tester that does it. We have to look at what kind of information do we want to have, who is most suitable to actually extract this. So I like to look less at roles and actually look at what information is important for us. Okay. So currently, I'm at Tetra Pak. It's an old classic Swedish company, and they make machines that make milk cartons, for example. When you have these paper packages with some liquids in, there's a big chance that it's Tetra Pak machines that actually have created this or packaged this. So you can see it as a big roll of paper with pre-printed information on, and a big jug of milk or water or something else. They pull in the paper, cut it, fold it, put on some adhesive. They shoot down the liquid, and then they fold it, again, some adhesive, and they tag it with the date. And the fast machines that are not the fastest one, they do this 10 times a second. So you need to have perfect cut every time. You're 1 millimeter off, you will be 1 centimeter off within a second, and then you have to throw away the batch. You have to send in the milk exactly in the right place at the right time all the time, because otherwise it starts to spill, comes on other packages, and they are ruined. They cannot stand still. If it stands still 1 hour, is 3,600 packages that are not produced. Did I count that correctly? 36. Yeah, never mind. There's a lot. It cannot stand still. It has to be going all the time. The engineering is fantastic. I really like to watch these machines go. But new times and new kinds of challenges and opportunities. So now we develop software that runs on Kubernetes with modern infrastructure, and they are changing to learn more about software development. And this is where I come in to help them as one piece of the puzzle. And it's an interesting challenge because they have to work in a different way and thinking a different way. Previously, when they created one machine, the machine was quite static. They were just doing some minor adjustments with different vendors or something like that. But now we need to make a security patch and maybe send it out to 100 factories. And we need to do it fast, and we need to test it fast. And perhaps we need to do it in 5 years' time. So the software we develop today must also be maintainable. There are a lot of interesting challenges in this context. The basic ones. How do we actually know what was tested? What were the results? And how do we know what was not tested? This is often forgotten, but can be almost as important when we look at it from an information perspective. If we take decisions based on information or lacking information, there's something we don't know, that can lead to consequences. So just as we need to know what has been tested, we must also look at what hasn't been tested. And we need to help the stakeholders to actually understand what do they need to look at, what are the decisions they need to take, and what are the questions they need to ask me or the development teams. Moving on to the tools. So in this presentation, I will show you a little bit about the tools I use currently. It's Azure DevOps, a lot of focus on Azure DevOps test from my side, and Power BI. I would prefer ClickSense. But this is the tool I had disposable in my current context. So no affiliation, and I don't want people to look too closely at the actual tools themselves, but look at the principles, because a lot of modern tools have the same capabilities. So, what I did, I hope maybe it's a bit tricky to read there. It's not that difficult to make a change to a work item in Azure DevOps. The only challenge is that you need to have the right permissions to actually do that. IT departments tend to try to lock down these kind of things. I have my ways to get around that. The last time I spoke with IT, they were surprised that I had those rights I actually had, because the guy I talked with didn't have the rights. So I asked him to not tell anyone. Anyway, in the test case, I've added a drop-down with the quality criteria. It says quality characteristic here. It's an old picture. I have updated that, I hope. But it doesn't matter. I wanted the testers, when they create the test cases, to think about what are they actually testing. Typically, often it's functional suitability. But by having this drop-down, I want them to think a little bit broader. Maybe there are some other tests as well that are important. So it's not only about me collecting the information, it's also to get them to think a little bit. I created, for exploratory testing, another work item. So we want to gather that information and that testing effort that the testers do that is not in a test case. I have, unfortunately, it came to a stop because I've changed in the organization. So the system is ready for exploratory testing, but I haven't really launched it yet. But here again, we have the test design and we have the quality criteria. I also added test techniques from the heuristic test strategy model. Again, to get them to consciously think about what am I actually testing now? Because we don't want testers to just test different things at random. We want them to think about what are they testing and what are they not testing. And then we have the bug report, of course, or the issues in Azure DevOps. So again, when they find a bug, to actually enter what quality criteria is threatening. What are the problems? Not only which area, but also the quality criteria. I also worked with the developers to help them write a little bit better automated checks. And it's not that difficult to do, but it takes a little bit extra effort if they haven't worked with this kind of code previously. Again, we started a project, but I was moved to another part of the organization, so a little bit unsure how it's going for them at the moment. But the point is, it's not difficult. It's very easy to add a category, as in this case, and call it functional suitability. And once we have it, it's easy to track. So, we basically have two levels. Team levels that create products that are then delivered to our system level. You can say it. And once the teams start to enter these kind of things, here we can see a team from one of the teams. So they have their own dashboard that is still in Azure DevOps. And here we can see where they have the emphasis. They're testing a lot on functional suitability, do a lot of tests on reliability, and a little bit on usability. And I just want you to remember the usability part, because I will come back to this one in a couple of slides. Then the question is, why don't they test the other things? How do they secure the quality for the other quality criteria? Is it their responsibility? Maybe they are simply not in a position because they don't have a complete enough system to test on. Or they cover this in another way. Maybe there's part of the process, the way they're working. Now, the data I have here, I've shown you, it's still in Azure DevOps. But it's very easy to extract in these days. So Azure DevOps has an API, you can call it. Let's see if I can do... Let's see. I have it. So there's lots of information that you can very easily extract from this. Let's see. Sorry, I have a good big picture here, so it's... So here we see test, code coverage, iterations, points, results, run sessions, and lots of those kind of information. See, I will remove this one again. So this is just, I just copied this one. It's a REST API call. You need to enter what kind of project it is, which test suite and which test plan, and then you will get the test points. So test points are actual results. So this is the test case plus the execution. And when you send it in, now it's a small text, but just for illustration, you get back a nice JSON file with all that information. You can just use it, test it quickly in your web browser. If it's working in your web browser, then you need authentication as well, like a personal access token or similar. And then you can extract it. JSON format, you can import it to a lot of different tools. And now we come to the business intelligence part. So just to show you some very basics, what is the difference between a business intelligence tool and Excel? So first you have the actual data. So I enter the REST API call, and it will create this kind of table inside Power BI. Or ClickSense if you prefer it. Now, this is a little bit difficult to read here, I see. But the point here is we have two different data sources, two different REST API calls. The first one is about test cases. You can't see it here, but it says work item ID. Now I connect it here to the test point because this text here, which you cannot read, it says test case reference ID. And this is the same thing. So I have connected this one and told Power BI that these tables are the same. So now the data is connected. And then we can visualize it. So using different data sources, we can create a model and explain to the program how it actually ties together. And now we can start digging into the data. If you just want to make a nice chart, then you can use Excel, for example. But if you want to dig in, then you need a business intelligence tool. Okay, so now we're coming to the big visualization. So this is how it looks like, or very similar to what we are looking at right now. Let's see, I hope you can read it. So now we can see we have a lot of test cases on functional suitability. And we can see that a lot of them are red, some are green, a lot of them are, not applicable, and then we have some that is unspecified, probably because they haven't been run. And then we have a couple of performance efficiency, and when we show this to stakeholders, now it's easy for them to ask, what about the rest? And this is the beginning of writing or telling the test story. For example, maintainability. It's difficult to make test cases on this one. Difficult to do exploratory testing as well. We need to secure that quality criteria in different ways. One way is code reviews. Another way is using some static tool analysis. I generally not excited by tools, but when it comes to maintainability, we found CodeScene, and I can really recommend that program because it is awesome. I'm hoping to be able to do a talk about how we're introducing it now with Tetra Pak. It basically gives us a score about how readable the code is for a human. More readable code, we push down the maintenance cost in the future, because it will be easier to understand, easier to get a fix. So maintainability is not part of this picture, because we do it in another way, we solve it in another way. But it's easy for the stakeholders now to ask, because they need to have information about how are the different quality criteria covered, if they are important at all. We have 0 test cases on usability, for example. That's because this particular project is, integration project, or integrate different products. That means that the usability by agreement is on the teams themselves. And as you remember from the previous picture, as soon as we go to that team, we could see that they had a lot of tests on usability. So we can connect things, and we can explain things, and we can show where we have tests, where we don't have tests, and where we have other quality efforts for this. There's a little bit more things I can do that are difficult to show here. But it's not only a chart, I can actually dig into the data. If I right-click on one of the charts, I can get all the test cases on this one. I can also easily sort not only by quality criteria, but quality criteria per product or per area. And the same thing for bugs. Now we can see where we're actually finding the bugs. And the easiest way to report 0 bugs is, of course, to not do any testing. So this is also something I explained to them, that 0 bugs is not necessarily good if it means that we haven't done any testing. I had a question from my manager on this topic. He asked me, how can we have 0 usability tests, but we're actually finding bugs? So I explained to him, well, our testers are actually thinking people. When they see something, they can file a bug even if it's not part of the test case. And just as a disclaimer, counting bugs is not or counting test cases, not necessarily a good indication of good or bad quality. But the circumstances right now means that I have a focus on the test cases. Okay, a little bit about the future. So a more complete test status report is to be created. We want to use more exploratory testing and start to track the automated checks. So we can have it in one picture so it's easy to see. So we can also see the distribution. How much of the test efforts of a certain quality criteria is done by test automation or automated checking, exploratory testing, test cases, or something else. We're also looking into a little bit different alternatives. In a lot of cases, we don't need to do that much digging. Often a chart is actually enough. So we're looking at Grafana at the moment, or if we should just wipe code a tool ourselves, because you can do it quite quickly today. So this is a little bit what's in our pipeline regarding these things at the moment. So, to the summary. So when creating a test story where we explain what we do, what we test, the results, and what we don't test, I have found that quality criteria is quite useful. And it's not that difficult to understand for stakeholders as well. I don't need to educate them what security or usability means. And the better information I can provide to the people taking decisions, the better decisions they can actually take. And it's also about helping them asking the right questions to make them understand what they can ask about by showing these visualizations. And modern tools make it quite easy. When you have REST APIs, you can pull out the information. And once you have the information, there's a lot of different tools which you can actually pull in and visualize it. And if you like, you can start with Excel and then move on to other things. And that's it for me. So thank you a lot. And please connect. Send me a ping on LinkedIn or an email. I will also go down to the speakers corner. So if you want to see something a little bit more practical and used, then I can show you there. Was a little bit short on time to do it right now. And I wish you a nice conference and see you at the party this evening.